McGregor here, proud Republican and resident of the great state of Minnesota. I'm here because there's some things about this country that are really starting to bother me. Oh, let's just talk about it. Let's just call the elephant out of the room. The post office. The United States Post Office. Everybody's getting all upset that their mail won't be able to go through. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Connie McGregor's mail goes through because if I need a letter to be delivered, I do it myself. All right? So a bunch of you can just get in your cars and just drive cross country and you hand that letter to who you needed to go to. Had enough of this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantine. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Thank you for being with us for another week. And what a week. The Republican National Convention wrapped up. Our condolences to the family members of everyone who went to that rally in person. And oh boy, so much happening in the world. And it's August, and we still have 4 months left of this year. So much happening, and we still have 4 months. I don't know how you people do it. I myself, I take a nap around August 30th, wake up around December 31st, and just start fresh. So I'll see y'all in 4 months. With that, Ned Thorne, my friend, star wipe us to this week's panel. And everyone, join me in welcoming this week's panel. First up, coming to us from a backyard that she says she will die in, our old friend Lana Duffy back on the show. Hey, Lana, how are you?
Better pandemics, but this one's all right by now.
Yeah, it's got nothing, as we said before, compared to Ebola. That was a pretty decent pandemic until noted communist and soft on crime Joe Biden had to go ahead and stop Ebola from creating jobs or whatever it would have done. Next up joining us, an outstanding comedian and social worker and friend of the show, Marcely Jean-Pierre. Marcely, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here again, and I'm just surviving like we all are.
At this point in August, like I've always kind of said that August is sort of feels like the month where you're like, all right, let's just get through the rest of the year. More so this year than ever before.
Oh yeah, I feel like everybody literally has to take it a day at a time, and just like there's no other approach to this entire year.
It's that is sad and true. So absolutely right. Next up joining us, very funny comedian, one of the hosts of Barely Making It, which you can catch every Wednesday at Tiny Cupboard in Brooklyn. Megan O'Malley's back. Hey Megan, how are you?
Hey, well, we're alive. So there we go.
For now.
Yeah.
This is the most optimistic show opening we've had in months. We are alive. That's what we have to say about 2020. And of course, also alive here in 2020, editorial columnist for the New York Daily News and Mike's Hard Lemonade enthusiast, Robert George. Hey, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing real well, Tom. And I have to disagree with Lana. This is the best pandemic in at least 100 years. And I would also even go further to say, look, 183,000 and counting deaths in America, so hey, we're number one, and anybody who says anything different is clearly a communist and socialist, because the RNC told me that last week, and I believe everything that's on there, because I'm one of those people. I'm one of those black folks that believes everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. So
well, no one's going to top that.
There you go. Well, anyway, Tom, I'm sorry. You had a whole great opening plan.
Nope, this is more or less where we were going to land. This week, the Republicans gathered on federal property that we pay taxes for to renominate Donald John Trump, current president of the United States as of this recording, to be their nominee for this fall's election. The election is officially underway. It's the Republican ticket. We had some doubts earlier in the month. That Mike Pence seemed to be potentially put out to pasture to, given the blame for COVID-19, but nope. Ticket came together. Trump-Pence is underway after a week of speeches that really, I think, laid the case out pretty clearly, which is, if you want, an America where there's chaos in the streets, where there's distrust between the people and their government, where people die because of pandemics, if you want to live in that kind of America, well, then go ahead and vote for Joe Biden, because it's certainly not happening right now. And that seemed to be the message for 4 nights from the Republicans. Get ready for, if you want to live in Joe Biden, look outside your window right now. Donald Trump's America is Joe Biden's America. Deal with it, people. That was the message that I think we got out of the Republican National Committee this week. And I think it was curious to me because it seemed like a convention that really, assumed that Donald Trump was not currently president. Like, that's how every argument that was made worked, except for a few times, particularly earlier in the week, where people kept it was kind of funny. It was like, remember the economy in February? We could be back there again if not for this virus that some guy let run rampant in the country. That was their lone positive, but otherwise it really had that assumption. And I was struck, and I want to start with the president's acceptance speech, which was done on the White House lawn. I went back and watched, it was the longest speech, or I believe second longest acceptance speech in modern history. I believe the longest was Donald Trump's in 2016. I went back and watched Donald Trump's 2016 speech, and I want to be clear what I'm about to say. When I say something that Trump did was good, I don't mean that it was a net positive. I mean it was effective in what he wanted to accomplish. The 2016 speech was one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed live. Rewatching it, it was crazy. The I alone can fix it, the sort of horrifying country that he created in people's mind. But it was a very effective speech, I'd say. It was really compelling, engaging, like the way he delivered it. If I had just been dropped on this planet and did not know what was going on in the world, I'd be like, this guy must be right. It was very well done. This week, the speech he gave on the White House lawn, his heart did not seem into it. He seemed like he did not want to be there. He seemed like it was, in his words, low energy. Sort of running the bases and skipping around from topic to topic. And that's what struck me the most. It was like, this is a, whatever. And I am certainly not in I'm certainly not in a Donald Trump can't win re-election camp by any stretch of the imagination. I certainly think he can. But the speech that happened on Thursday did not feel like the speech of someone whose heart was in it and whose heart was in this race. And that's what really stood out to me. And I'm curious, for those who watched the speech, everyone on the panel watched the speech or bits of it at least.
I'll say that I could not get through it.
As I say, for folks listening, there was a lot of sad nodding of head. Like, it was the reaction, like I was like, you guys talk to Aunt Glenda? She's kind of forgetting things. And I was like, Lana, you couldn't get through it.
I can't listen to him talk for 5 minutes, much less an hour and God knows. I mean, really, I prefer the higher energy clips of some of his pseudo family members that screamed at me and screamed at an empty auditorium.
Kimberly Guilfoyle on Monday really came strong.
Yeah, she was opening that up for everyone. Just
Girlfriend.
We're here in an empty room screaming at it.
That's nothing sums up the Trump presidency. Marcely, thoughts on the speech? If that was from a president of this country who I can't help but I wake up every morning, I'm like, the president is a former game show host.
Yeah, hey, a former game show host, and just like he was like an iconic figure for like not positive reasons. It's just so strange, like the realization that he's our president. But in terms of the actual speech, I didn't. I agree with your take on it. It wasn't a good speech, and I, there are certain things that I expect from a Trump speech, particularly at a rally when he has like his crowd to kind of feed off of. It's the energy, it's the obviously the lies are going to come regardless, but it's the energy and just like rallying people up and just like those keywords to get people all just crazy and in their own feelings about things. But yeah, he just seemed like he didn't want to be there. He seemed like he was just like not too sure what he wanted to do, what the point of his actual speech was. And I was actually a little surprised. I typically, it's a struggle for me to sit through an entire Trump speech, especially in the back of my mind, always thinking like, how do people not see through this? But yeah, I think the reasons that people, tend to accept him are far beyond logic. So, that it's just kind of a waste of time for me to even try to dwell on that.
Megan, I'm curious your take on the speech, and particularly, I've enjoyed. You've a few times mentioned having in your occasional catering career, being in the room with some of these Trumps. So I was I was thinking about you during a few of the moments this week. But thoughts on his speech, and maybe on a couple of the family member speeches as well.
Well, I had wine and I had weed. That was the only way I was going to be getting through any of that, because Monday I lasted 5 minutes and I was like, I can't. This is so angry. Tuesday, it was like everybody was on Xanax. Wednesday, I only tuned in for Melania, where you're like, it's obvious. This was not plagiarized. Also, it's obvious nobody helped you. Like, why weren't they giving her the light? Like, that needed to be edited down, because she was at her last paragraph so many times when she'd be like, and this, it's just like the way she was doing, you're like, oh, it's almost done. And then you're like, hold on, she's going to talk for 20 more minutes? What's going on? Yeah, Trump was hard to get through because of all the lies he was saying. And I mean, it's like a fact checker's dream to have that much to do in one speech. But I also was fighting with my Republican Trump supporting mother earlier that day. So everything he was saying, I was like, yeah, this is why they believe this to be true. This is why, like, it was very enraging. Especially since my mom now believes that supporting Biden is supporting Marxist views.
Yep.
So
Ask the good people at Bank of America if they think that's true. Robert, you've written a couple lines in RNC speeches. You've been to a couple of them. I like to say you're one of the few people I know who I think has been to so many political conventions where the presidential nominee lost the popular vote. So I consider you to be a lucky charm for them. What did you think watching this thing?
I agree with my colleagues. This was certainly not the Master Trump show that we've come to expect. Marcelly is absolutely correct that Trump at his best, forget about the content that's coming out of his mouth. He's a natural good performer. He is something between he's something between a good solo improviser and a white rapper. And that's the thing,
It also elicits the same love and respect from the public as improvisers and white rappers.
Well, this is the thing, he would be the worst person. All of us here have dabbled in improv at some point. He would be the worst person to have on your team, because it would be all about him. But in terms of being a solo performer, and then figuring out how to engage with the audience and all this other kind of stuff. When he's on his when he's really on, he's really good. I mean, you may be horrified about what's coming out of his mouth, and particularly where he's weaving in authoritarian / racist themes and things like that. But just if you want to give the devil his due, that's exactly what happens. Now but he's always, the flip side of that is, he is always slightly at a loss when he is sort of the prisoner of the teleprompter. So whenever he's doing a State of the Union address, for example, his energy level will be just a little bit lower, and it's not going to be quite the same. Not going to be quite the same effect. It was surprising that given that this was the first time he'd been in front of like a live audience of some of some numbers, that he wasn't able to feed off of that energy a little bit more, and he needed, I think Megan said that that Melania needed an editor. He clearly needed an editor for this particular address. Joe Biden's acceptance speech a week ago was one of the shortest, going back 40 some,
which
40 some
given
years.
Joe Biden was very surprising.
Which given Joe,
I think that's like any lead he has in the polls right now. Part of that was, well, he wrapped that speech up pretty quick. That was pretty nice.
If you guys were doing over unders on speech length, 2 weeks ago, you would have thought that Biden and Trump would have probably been, within, 5 to 15 minutes of one another, because the odds are either of them could have gone on forever. And so the fact that you had almost a 45-minute difference between the speeches is surprising. It was a laundry list kind of greatest hits kind of thing. And it was greatest hits mixed in with Biden's coming and he's going to destroy everything about this country, which is kind of difficult to make. And this is something I was really shocked at. And it didn't even occur to me when I was listening to it. Somebody pointed it out, I think, on Twitter afterwards. So he mentioned Biden 41 times. How many times did he mention Kamala Harris?
Zero.
Zero. Which, I mean, people who know, given Donald Trump's inclinations, you would have thought that he might have mentioned there's a black woman on Biden's ticket, and Biden's gonna die, and Shield's gonna end up running everything. I mean, that would have been my sense of how he was going to be going, but he didn't go that way at all. He decided to go with the country is in flames, and this is Biden's America. And if you want more of Biden, if you want more of what's going on out there, you're gonna vote for him. Instead, if you don't want that to happen, you want Trump Pence, or as I call it, TP2, because there's still a lot of shit to get done.
Nice. Wow, boy, I can't believe that. Again, I can't believe the Republicans let you get away. I think your mic issue seems to have cleared up a little bit too, so you can
right,
cool. But let's talk very quickly then about, there's not a ton to talk about on this, but I think it is worth discussing that, a lot of media covering a Thursday night speech made a point of the fact that it was unprecedented that the speech would be delivered on the White House lawn. And there's, as it turns out, a reason that it's unprecedented, and that is that it is not legal to do that. The Hatch Act is an act that denies using sort of your federal property and federal time to campaign for things and do political campaigns.
Didn't they also didn't our boy Pompeo speak from didn't the Secretary of State spoke from a foreign country? Didn't he speak from Israel?
Israel. He
Yeah.
did indeed. And
isn't that also illegal?
He's
that
not
was also
my boy, first of all. I want to be clear.
And just to add on to that, most of the other speeches through the week, that they were, I forget which building it is, but it is a federal building a few blocks from the from the White House, and technically they're not supposed to be doing that. They're not supposed to be doing that there. But the entire, basically the entire performance of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were just the Trump people thumbing their nose at official Washington and saying, hatch act, smash act. We're going to do this. And hey, look, you impeached me once. Come at me, bro. Try and do it again.
Well, what's interesting, I didn't know until this week, is like now two important things on the Hatch Act, like that actually Trump and Pence are exempt from it.
Correct.
So Ivanka Trump did break the law on Thursday night. Donald Trump didn't. The problem, of course, the big to do is that the Hatch Act is enforced by the Department of Justice, which is run by Bill Barr, who is not super inclined, we found, to hold Donald Trump accountable. And that's part of, I think, why like the media response was like, oh, what are you going to do? Because we all sort of accept that as long as the Senate is controlled by Republicans and the DOJ is controlled by Trump, that nothing will come of this. But I do think it is important to note that, like, the reason it was unprecedented is because it's not supposed to.
Hey, Tom, can I make a quick point here?
Oh, sure.
And this is actually this is Robert, putting on his occasional serious hat.
Oh.
As bad as what Trump was doing, the desecration, in a sense, of the White House and the White House lawn and the South Lawn was just horrible. But the worst violation of the Hatch Act didn't involve what was going on in the White House or the building near the White House. It happened actually up in New York, where Lynn Patton, who is who oversees like this particular section of public housing in the Northeast.
Yeah, she's a HUD's person for New York,
the Northeast.
New Jersey,
Yeah,
and I believe Connecticut as well.
Yeah, sector. I forget that they put it in sector numbers, which is so.
Yeah.
I can't. So
a job formerly held by, among other people, current New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and Marisol Morales, who's a Republican commentator. A few other notable people have that job.
Exactly. So she interviewed 3 women who live in public housing in NYCHA, and asked them to share their issues, and they went off on how awful the living was, and had major criticisms for the New York mayor, and there was several hours of footage, and these were boiled down to a few minutes on Thursday. During the Republican convention, these women did not know and obviously they didn't give for their permission for this footage to be aired to be aired at the RNC
or as a political ad, yeah,
as a de facto political ad. And the thing is, even if Lynn Patton, takes her camera and does this filming at, 8:00 in the evening or something like that, when she's like technically, off duty. The fact is, if they know who she is, they know that she has some influence on their public housing situation. Even if they don't know that this is about a political ad, the fact that they're talking to this person who said, "Oh, maybe this person will give, will have will be able to influence the mayor and so forth." She is using her title and her role to gain their trust, so they can be filmed for her political for her political goal, not for their own. That is the reason why we have a thing called the Hatch Act. So government employees don't use their power of office or their influence in office to basically get one over on private individuals, and use the power of that office and the equipment and resources of that office for a political end. That to me is in its own way is even more egregious than anything that Trump or the family did this past week.
And some of those, an important thing though, the exceptions that are carved out for Pence and Trump, or the president and vice president, even that has a little bit more to do with security, among other things. And like, because one thing, when like senators are in the cycle, when senators are in an election cycle, it's the thing they talk about is like your Democratic and Republican parties have private office space that when they need to call donors, they're walking distance from Capitol Hill, and they can walk over there and do that, do those calls and still get back to Capitol Hill if they're needed for work. With the president and the vice president, the thought is first was like, it's difficult to put the president anywhere that isn't a huge security thing, so he can make those calls from, in theory, even the Oval Office. Although the Oval Office, I think there's generally, that's one of those things where like presidents have normally not. They've normally done it from the private residence. So like those exceptions exist more from a logistics standpoint than from a like the president and the vice president are great, so they should be allowed to do whatever they want.
And in fact, the president and the vice president are
not great.
Yeah.
No,
True.
but I'm just talking about the individuals in the office. Not
even then, you could say more often than not great.
The point is,
sorry, I want to apologize to the family of John Tyler. Anyway, go ahead.
They are really the only people in government that's what they're doing 24/7.
Yeah.
There's not really an off time for them. Whereas anybody, if you're a member of Congress or a staffer or things like that, you can carve out carve out private time. If you're the president of the United States, you can't really do that.
Using the South Lawn is still in violation because of all of the personnel.
Yeah.
And the money that goes into it, and you're using taxpayer dollars to set up a political event, regardless of who is speaking at it or running it. And so I mean that's the main violation there. It's just like, even if Pompeo paid for his own way to go to Israel to make his own speech, he still needed his security detail. He flew to the Middle East and to Africa, which is where he was prior, on government aircraft. So, I mean, he also was in violation of his office as well. So, I mean, there's some issues. I feel like Trump is the perfect president for 2020. He is just representative
of this calendar year in America.
Of this year.
Well, and like, to be clear, like that's, I invoke the part about the vice president and the president's exemption just for clarity on the issue. I think you could also say like, it's pretty Trumpy to be like, yeah, we should do it on the White House lawn. Like, I can't get in trouble. And I can pardon the rest of you if it becomes a thing. I won't, except for my daughter. But otherwise, it was a nightmarish convention. But I think what struck me about the week and is that in the backdrop of this Republican convention, a big thing that happened earlier this week on Monday, I think it was Monday or Tuesday at the convention, they had the couple from Missouri that bravely defended their front lawn of their
McCluskeys. The
McCluskeys. I'm sorry.
The McCluskeys from Missouri. Yes.
Oh, my apologies to the McCluskeys for not knowing their names off the top of my head, who bravely defended their McMansion's front lawn by pointing guns at protesters. Were given a few moments. They talked about, they you could call it a racial dog whistle. I'd call it basically a bullhorn where they bemoaned the risk of cheap apartments in your neighborhoods and that kind of, and abolishing the suburbs. But it is notable that this happened while in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which has been the site of protests after the shooting of a black man by police. And we will talk about the specifics of that in a moment. But it was striking to me that they gave that speech as well in the, within the same 48-hour period. A young man who did not even live in the town of Kenosha,
or the state of Wisconsin,
or in the state of Wisconsin, traveled there with a gun, and I guess technically we can say allegedly shot and killed people, because from a legal standpoint, it's not been proven, but it's pretty.
Well,
it was likely him. It was likely young Mr. Rittenhouse who.
It's pretty clear, actually. The legal parts of this are kind of interesting, but it's pretty clear he shot 3 people. 2 of them died. The question is whether it's murder or not. That's there's even actual video of him on the phone saying, "I just killed somebody," which suggests, he just killed somebody.
If you're gonna get videotaped saying something on the phone, you don't want it to be that. It was striking to me that, I think to me, it's like, if nothing else sums up Donald Trump's America, is that, in the middle of his Republican National Committee, a young white terrorist, in my view, with a gun, went and shot and killed Black Lives Matter protesters. And it's it was as on the nose a metaphor for this moment in time as I could possibly see. And I guess as we transition to that topic, thoughts anyway from around.
Can I be more cynical?
I'm gonna get Lana to be cynical first.
Lana, go.
Well,
I
sit a bit more on the fence on this particular issue, mostly because it doesn't appear as though it appears as though he did in fact fire in self-defense. The law that he broke was to have a long-barreled weapon under the age of 18, and he was out after curfew. And people have been making comparisons to like a war zone as far as some of these protest locations go. And so, should he? I believe in the right to own firearms within reason. I believe that people need to people need to be certified and recertified to have them, and so forth. It does appear from the video and from the reporter who spoke to him and from the reporter's statement that he actually did kind of do everything right except for being there. And he shouldn't have been there. None of them should have been there. It was 3 hours or 4 hours or something after curfew. He did have a weapon, which he transported across state lines, and he wasn't supposed to have the weapon to begin with. He doesn't appear to have gone there with the intent to harm anyone, and the only times he fired his weapon were when he believed that he was in danger, or in one instance when someone clearly was trying to get his weapon from him, or grab his weapon from him in an attacking manner. It's gonna be a legal battle as to whether or not he gets charged with murder. I don't think he will. I don't think that the case is strong enough, just in terms of him being firing in self-defense. And also, he was like half an hour, 40 minutes. He lived like half an hour, 40 minutes away across the border. I've definitely commuted longer than that. But again, he shouldn't have been there. Yeah. None of them should have been there. They were all after curfew.
The really fuzzy area is the initial shooting. and the events that were going on in that initial shooting. That I think is where
the initial shooting from Rittenhouse.
The first person who was shot.
The first person.
Yeah.
The first person.
Let's step back, and because I think this entire situation in Kenosha, like, it is
fluid.
I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt it's like there's almost like so many things happened this week that I almost felt like I caught bits and pieces of it and then had to go back to the beginning to see everything that happened. I have a very let's talk first about this shooting since we're on the topic. Then we can go to the entire story from Kenosha from the get-go as well. But Robert, you were starting to say the initial.
Well, I'm hoping I'm getting the right. The initial shooting was Rittenhouse shooting a gentleman by the name of Rosenbaum, and it's not Michael Rosenbaum because that's an actor. No, but his name is it's Joseph Rosenbaum. I believe he was the first person that encounters. So, and by the way, kudos to the New York Times video team, because they did some like really yeoman work in getting footage from a number of different individuals and then kind of putting it together into an interesting timeline. It appears that the first time we see Rosenbaum, he's running, the first time we see Rittenhouse is running, and Rosenbaum is chasing after him for reasons I don't think we fully know at this point. Somebody else shoots a gun into the air, and Rosenbaum throws something at Rittenhouse. Somebody said Molotov cocktail, but that's been pushed aside, I think, and it looked like it was a soda can or something. Anyway, and the throwing of this can and the shot going off in the air are within a few seconds of one another. Rittenhouse turns around, and that's when he shoots. Rosenbaum. Now, I've seen there's some. I just saw today a thread from this individual who suggests that Rittenhouse then is shooting Rosenbaum when he's on the ground and so forth. Anyway, I didn't see that part. I saw that he shoots him, and then he goes. Somebody else comes out and like takes off their shirt and tries to administer aid to Rosenbaum, and then Rittenhouse picks up his phone and tells somebody, "I just killed somebody." He then starts running off. Somebody else, or a bunch of other people who had seen this initial shooting, they start chasing him, and he's running through the streets. And you've got all these people. Somebody tries to tackle him, and that doesn't work. And then somebody else comes in with a skateboard, and then he shoots him, and then shoots somebody else. And one of those people he shoots ends up. So that whole episode where you've got.
Well, I'm sorry, just a minute. And again, I want to be one of the people he shoots ended up being the second person who died.
The second person who died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So that particular episode, it's at that point I'm in 100% agreement with Lana. It's difficult to make a murder case stick because you've got video of a horde of people chasing the one guy. Now, I think it's one of these cases. I mean, it's a bad choice of words, but this is a kind of a almost like a fog of war situation. You've got people, some people who see him shoot another individual. They think they're doing the right thing by trying to stop a guy who murdered somebody, who killed somebody else. So they're trying to bring him down. He's running from them because he thinks that they're coming to attack him, which in a sense they are. So he turns around and shoots them. So a case that in my view is a pretty clear case of self-defense. Particularly since one of the people chasing him apparently also did have a gun. Now I don't know if that was the same person who shot the gun in the air the first time. So that part seems to be. I think the real question, and if there is a case to be made against him, it's what was going on between him and Rosenbaum in that initial episode.
And unfortunately, according to Wisconsin law, it actually doesn't matter what was going on prior. And as soon as he turned around and started to run away, he was counted as, and he didn't fire first. he did not shoot prior to turning around to run away from Rosenbaum. And
He turned
so
he turned
he
when he
turned
saw.
around and started running away from Rosenbaum. And then he turned back around and fired. But as soon as he turned around and ran away, anything that led up to it was no longer up for discussion because he was no longer the aggressor in the situation. But either way, I don't buy a fog of war, or like, you know, this guy was, I hate the defense of somebody else's property and this is a war zone. So like, you know what, if you want to defend somebody else's property, join the police force.
Yeah,
Or
Marcy, I think,
like
I'm sorry.
become a security guard. Like, don't bring your gun to someone else's place. Oh, but it got burned the night before. You know what, buddy? Like, join the military. We'll see you in a year because you're 17. You know, if you wanna go shoot people, there's a way for you to do it. But that's about the only thing that I can see, that when people are like, oh, it's a war zone, and you know, yeah, but in a war zone you have rules of engagement, and whether or not they're a little bit more lax now under the current administration, but it looks as though he had practiced with it. Looks as though he was actually following every law except for curfew and having the gun in the first place, but his mom brought him to the protest. So like, we need to talk about some parenting.
I don't know if that my mom brought me to the protest is going to hold up in court. Marcely, I think you had a point there.
Yeah, there was a lot of different things. There was a lot of different things that I guess that I kind of wanted to touch on, but I guess for the sake of me, I kind of lost track of some of those things. But yeah, I just wish that, you know, that same benefit of the doubt was applied when it was when it's like somebody who looks like me, because it's just not the case. And you know, I respect the trying to get the details of the situation, but like, honestly, none of that shit really matters to me, because he brought an assault rifle to a crowd of people that he knows he didn't agree with, and he knows they're going to oppose him. And so like, the intent, I think there's zero way to say like he didn't necessarily have the intent to shoot anybody or harm anybody. There's no way to tell. If you bring an assault rifle to a group of protesters who you know you oppose, what you have to always think, what's the worst that can happen in this situation? And if you're not considering that, then like, don't fucking bring a gun to a protest, you know? And yeah, it's the way that he's being painted, and people are trying to justify. There's people calling him a hero, like, and it's just it's crazy to me. You know, where you have on the other opposite end of things, you know, when it comes to you know, Jacob Blake, people are talking about him as if he, you know, there was a potential knife in his car when he got shot in the back 7 times. And meanwhile, people are trying to find like the most pleasant euphemisms to discuss this guy. So like, all of the gray area on the fence shit for me just doesn't play. It just really just doesn't mean.
Well, I think
now I do think that they should have rounded his ass up from the beginning. Like, he shouldn't have had it in the first place, and he should pay the price for it, even if it's, you know, even if they can't make another charge stick, so it ends up being manslaughter or whatever. Because yeah, if he also is in rural Wisconsin, or they're like, and they still have to extradite him from Indiana or whatever it is. Illinois,
Yeah.
one of the I states. I don't know. Mix them all up.
And I think
like,
sorry, go ahead.
And no, it is completely, it's insane that this all happened in the same town where then they're protesting and yes, rioting because of a black man getting shot in the back 7 times, and now a white kid can just roll in with a weapon he's not supposed to have, and nobody blinks at it even after he shoots somebody and then shoots 2 more people. And I mean, that is absurd. And it is a disgusting portrayal in this country, and a sad representation of a lot of this country. But
why can't we get this white on white violence under control? I mean, that really is the issue. I mean, where are the parents, Tom?
But you're right. But you're absolutely right. I think, personally, and I think one thing about, and Alana, thank you for laying out the legal reality there. Like, I'm a big believer. Laws exist so that you can be treated fairly while I judge you with impunity in my personal, like, that's my thing. Like, I think, this kid should be treated, everyone should be treated fairly under the law. And then I can call him a terrorist or whatever I want because I think he showed up to provoke a fight. I think, I will give not leeway, but like, I can appreciate that a 17-year-old who goes to provoke a fight is different from a 35-year-old who goes to provoke a fight, but the result is still the same thing. But I think exactly your point, right? Like this, like this, and dovetailing off, Marcely, of your point here, of your point about why the benefit of the doubt is not given to people who look like you. Like, how many times have we seen, like, lack of a better word, and I was one, so I can say this, like, creepy loner white teen with a gun, and we're kind of like, oh, but he's probably okay. Like, at this point, there's a description that a lot of these kids are fitting, and it is a sign of the racism of our society that description has not become like synonymous with violence. Megan, make sure you get a point to comment here as well. You and I both grew up in the Northeast, and we're both Irish Catholics who have cousins and friends from how we grew up who became cops who shouldn't have been. So we have some authority to speak on this. Thoughts on this? On this?
I honestly, everything is just disgusting that happened this week, and he's being glorified, and you got the McCloskeys also this week who are being treated as heroes, and this country needs serious gun reform. That's really my take on this one, because if this is the path we're going down, this is not gonna be good at all. So if we think 2020 was bad, 2021 is going to be even worse if we have now everybody is now part of their own militia.
And imagine a 2021 where a lot of people who carry guns, who perhaps support a current president, feel as if the election was unfair. Robert, you've alluded to this, that we could be in for years and years of some real strife and unrest.
I do want to say one other thing. Like, in the beginning of the pandemic, it was like, what's going to be going on? What's happening? And, we all made our pandemic panic purchases. I got a buck knife. At the beginning of this, because I was like, I don't know what I thought, like we were going to go to the woods or something, because in my mind, it's like, that's where we go. But then at the same time, I was like, well, no, a knife is so much better, because it's like,
you could do other things with it.
Yeah, you could whittle. I'm going to become really great at whittling.
You can defend yourself. You can whittle.
Yeah, but it's not a gun. My dad is the safest gun owner there is. And that is 100% the truth. He has all the guns are registered. They are all, they're not together. They're in different parts. They're underneath the stairs. There is a bookcase in front of it. He's a hoarder, so there's a lot of books that in front of that. He can't get to this gun. But he still, he believes, in the rules, so it's registered. It's like, you didn't have to do that, because you're never going to use it. Also, he's not using it as a weapon. Somebody comes in, he'd be like, can you give me, maybe 3 hours? I gotta run downstairs and move some things around. And then,
first of all, I have to find it before I defend my home against
Yeah. Also, my back is bad. Could you help me move some things around? If there's any books you want, please take
You know what? Rob most of what I've hoarded. How's that for a trade-off?
Yeah.
The easy way to clean up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well done, Megan. Does anyone actually want to talk about what happened with Jerry Falwell this week? Because it's kind of hilarious, but I don't know how much political implication it has. Go ahead, Megan.
I'll just say simply, like, live your life. Everyone has their kinks. Do what you gotta do. Just don't be a liar.
Yeah.
Don't shame other people and try to be all high and mighty.
Yeah.
So yeah, am I enjoying this week? Yes.
Yeah.
I am, because you're a liar.
It was one of the few positives of the week. Yeah. And to
I
be clear,
have friends who are sex workers. Great. They're not liars.
We're not
they are layers, actually, I guess you would say.
Oh dear. This show is firmly against kink shaming. Yeah, exactly. If Jerry Falwell and his wife want to hire any number of people to have sex with her while he watches, knock themselves out.
She's getting taken care of. Honestly, she wins in this situation.
But the problem, of course, being
unlike
don't tell other people what to do with their lives. That's the thing.
Unlike those Republican members of Congress that Jerry Falwell supports, he believes in oversight. So,
oh boy, that was one for a very select audience, but I'll allow it. I'll simply say he's getting paid out, I think, $10.5 million from Liberty University for violating their ethics clauses, which I can say you can get a lot of pools cleaned with that kind of money. Let me tell you something. All right. Any other thoughts on Falwell, or we're good? Let's move on.
I love the fact that his wife is named his wife is named Becky, which is just like which is just so freaking cool. Between her and Lori Loughlin, the Beckys are giving the Karens a run for their money this summer. I mean, more power to them. Becky, get your freak on, lady.
Again, the white-on-white violence has to stop. So let's turn to one last thing. Some sad news that came out Friday night. Chadwick Boseman, star of Black Panther, star of was it 42? Is the Jackie Robinson movie's name?
42. Get on up. The James Brown.
Yeah.
As well. Marshall, of course.
Marshall, passed away at 43. From colon cancer, and a huge outpouring for him that we've seen sort of almost from across like the worlds of politics, entertainment, sports, media. It really shocked people, and I think it's shocking for 1,000 reasons, not least of which, from where I sat, it was just shocking to know that he had been diagnosed with this 4 years ago. When you think of all the movies and work he did in that meantime while living with this illness, I always thought he was a great actor and performer. I was like, wow, he was a great actor and performer, to live your life that way. Thoughts from the panel on Chadwick Boseman, the late Chadwick Boseman?
Yeah, I was very devastated to hear, because Chadwick is one of the Black American actors that I can he's like a go-to when we're trying to list the few that we have that are prevalent in Hollywood. And it's just very difficult because he made a point to embody so many iconic Black figures, even a fictional iconic Black figure, Black Panther, who I've always loved because I'm also big into comic books, and I have this T-shirt on that has Black Panther on it. But yeah, just like the movement that occurred when the movie came out, it was just bigger than the movie. The movie itself was good. It was a really good movie. But what the impact that it had on just people across the world was just phenomenal. And just being able to see the children of my friends just with their Black Panther toys. I have two friends who have sons who literally wear their Black Panther jacket almost every single day. And I had the conversations with them, and they were just struggling on how to be able to have the conversations with their sons, that their hero is gone, the person who played their hero. So, it's just devastating on so many different levels. But I am glad that Chadwick Boseman was able to have, he was able to win a number of awards. He was able to have the one segment on Jimmy Fallon where I don't know if you've all seen the clip, but a bunch of fans were able to kind of like express how much they were grateful for him and his presence in the movie and how much it's impacted them, and he was able to like experience that face to face. And I'm just glad that he was able to get his flowers while he was still here.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderfully expressed. And I mean, I was working on getting some work done last night, and I'm going to Twitter, and I see this pop up, and I just said, wait, no, that's and you see this thing, and you think, wait, that's not right. That can't be. This is like some kind of joke, and I like literally typed out. I said, wait, this can't be true, and then it turned out to be true. The most shocking thing is that two shocking things. 43 years old is ridiculously young, and as Tom pointed out, he did three Marvel movies as Black Panther, including the title movie, the two Avengers, well, the three Avengers ones, I guess. So basically, four Marvel-related movies plus Marshall, plus a couple other things. I think it was a total of 7 movies he did between the time he was diagnosed and the time he passed. And it's. And if you look at Black Panther, I mean, he's the close-ups when he doesn't have the suit on, he's like really, really buff. The really what is now incredibly sad is when you start to see some footage of him at some award ceremonies in that time, and you notice how skinnier he looked and slimmer, and so you don't think at the time you would not have thought about it. So well he dropped some weight from when he was a Black Panther. So they like Christian Bale, they put on pounds, they take them off because there's a new film coming out. Now you kind of realize that there was a huge physical and obviously mental struggle that was going on in between all of those movies, and he didn't show it to the world. He just showed his best. And it's remarkable that somebody in the acting profession has the gift. Obviously, he's got the acting chops, but he's also got the wisdom in terms of the roles that he was taking. I mean, obviously, it's partly what's offered, but he was making some interesting conscious choices of individuals of great historic significance, particularly historic significance to the Black community, that brings them public acclaim, but brings him acclaim enough that he gets to this point where, the Marvel people say, he's the guy that we need for Black Panther, which then gives him an even broader platform. So I mean, it's just a horrible loss, but I mean, it's just a remarkable body of work that he leaves, at the age of 43.
Megan, would you like any thoughts on his passing?
I mean, I feel like you guys put it so beautifully. He's going to be missed. It was really sad. I don't have anything more beautiful to say. I think Marsley got it the best.
That's all right, Lana. Any thoughts you'd like to share?
I don't. I also don't have anything. I definitely had the same reaction actually as Robert when the notification came across, and I was like, wait, he was 43. And I will admit that I definitely did the COVID check of because there was no indication. There was you're doing all of these movies on chemo or on radiation therapy or something like that. Can't be right. And so, and it's actually one of the few, I have a notorious problem with not knowing the names of actors or anything like that, and that is one that I recognized and could put a face to the name and all of that. And so yeah, I think that it really it hit really surprisingly I think hard, especially in a time when there's so much stuff happening and so much going on in the world already, and then it's and then still there's still so much focus on like this is almost sadly representative of these unprecedented times because I believe actually you said earlier in the week, Tom, that you sure wish we were you would sure kill for some precedented times these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate living in interesting times is my general mantra. It's like the worst thing in the world.
Hey, Tom, one other quick observation. This, our mutual friend Ivan Cohen mentioned this on his Facebook over this weekend.
He's a terrific comic book writer, writes the Scooby-Doo comics for DC.
Right, great writer, great editor. He had mentioned, he'd said this, and the thought had occurred to me last night when I'd heard the news that even before the pandemic had hit, I was surprised that I hadn't heard more talk about Black Panther 2, about production schedules and things like that, and it was because everybody knew that there was going to be a sequel coming, and said you'd figure out it would be further along and what was going to be the release date, and so now when you figure it out, it just kind of clicks that obviously the folks at Marvel were aware of his condition, and we fingers crossed, hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and you don't like to think of it in these kind of terms, but I can't think of an actor who had headlined a $1 billion film and was a featured character in 3 others, and dying at such another age. It is horrifying. It's horrifying to his family, horrifying to friends and so forth. But it's just in terms of these ideas of film and economics and all this other kind of stuff. It's just like, this is a big name. This is a big name in the pop culture. And so that's why it's just a sudden shock to such a sudden shock to everyone.
I think a thing that occurred to me, and I think everyone on this panel knows, and folks who listen to the show know, my previous life, I was a comic book editor for Marvel. And I remember I was thinking about this morning. I went out and take a walk, and I was thinking about Chadwick Boseman passing and people's reaction to it. And I was remembering back in it was December of 2012, I had like sort of my worst day on the job, and it was the day of the massacre in Newtown in Connecticut, and it was not a particularly, like, nothing bad was happening to me that day, certainly. But I was putting out a book where like the superhero in the book was like guns blasting into solving every problem. And I felt like putting this book out while looking at this news of these kids being killed, like I felt like, oh, I'm part of the problem. I remember feeling that way. And that's not really a fair thing, certainly not a fair thing. The people who made this book, were very adamant about they wanted to make a book that was for older audiences. They were certainly by no means, I think they did a very responsible book. It just, it was a book that was for older people. But I was just taking this news in and feeling like, oh, I'm part of the problem. And I think I tried really hard to fight that mindset, but I've sort of accepted that, those who work in creative arts have as much responsibility as they put on themselves, what their art, the impact that their art has. But I think if that is true, if I can feel some responsibility on that, there's another side to it, which is when the Black Panther film came out, my old boss, who is a Black woman, she was pregnant, she was about to have a kid, and she went to go see Black Panther with her husband, and she told me the next day, she knew I worked at Marvel and was gushing about the movie. She's like, my son's never going to grow up in a world where there wasn't a Black superhero. And people at Marvel, you guys are all responsible for that. And now I worked on a Black Panther story in my time that I worked there. It's a great comic. L.A. Kalin wrote it. Black Panther and the Incredible Hulk team up to save the Empire State Building from Hydra. It's a great book. But it did occur to me that, and particularly I thought that I've had the last few months, we've really had an idea of who is important and who is an essential worker. And certainly, my job when I made comics is not more important than a doctor or a nurse or a grocery store worker. But it really did highlight to me that the work that I did mattered to people. And whether there are days when you work in comics, you ask people work in comics, it's a low paid job full of bitter people. And there are times you're like, oh, our work doesn't matter to anyone, who cares? But here's, we're all of us who work, particularly all of us who worked at Marvel, we're a little bit of a part of that, a tiny part, not the, I didn't even work on that movie. I'm not claiming that responsibility, but there's a certain amount of credit that we get. And I guess my thought when I was having this morning is like, whatever people do, whatever job anyone has, I hope someone like Chadwick Boseman shows up in that industry and gives you a reason to stop and look at what you do and say, hey, what I do matters to people. That is a huge gift that a man I never met gave to me. And for that, I think again, he's someone I never met, but I will miss the hell out of him. And I'm very thankful for him putting me in a position to really think about the work I did and what it meant to people. And with that, Robert George is going to interrupt me before I end the show.
No, I wasn't going to interrupt you. I mean, that what you just said there was beautiful. But I just wanted to just kind of put a button on.
Do this an hour and a half now. I gotta let these people leave.
Just something that Marcelly said earlier on, where he said that Boseman was like the most outstanding African American actor of his generation, and and it's really true, especially because with the exception of Michael B. Jordan, all the other Black actors are British, or it seems that way, and so God, brother Boseman was carrying such so much on his shoulders. I mean, it's true.
That's well said. With that, we are going to call it for this episode of Electoral Dysfunction. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, Marcelly Jean-Pierre.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan O'Malley. Thank you, Lana Duffy. And thank you, Robert George. And as always, thank you very much to, who am I thanking? Thank you very much to Kevin Scott for our show animation. Thank you to Joanne Harris for our show theme song. Thank you very much to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for the show Electoral Dysfunction's show Eagle Art. Thank you to my friend Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. And now to play us out this week, this is a week where I need to hear some marimba. So I'm going to throw it over to Brooklyn to our old buddy David Frazier, who's going to play us out this week. Ned Thorne, star wipe us to Brooklyn.
Man, that star swipe over to Brooklyn always feels so sweet. Hey again, all the Electoral Dysfunction fans, and hello again, Tom. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm going to perform for you a very well-known piece of Broadway music from the musical Rent. This is my arrangement of the song Seasons of Love. I hope you like it.